What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, we're finally getting into that time period for 2022 where every single week it seems like some big release will be happening. And in fact, in a couple of days, one of Nintendo's biggest titles for the holiday season will be dropping, except it's already dropped online. Go figure there with a new Switch release. We'll talk about that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about PlayStation and this showcase that feels like it's been rumored for a while now. Well, it appears we may have a reason for why it hasn't happened, which, well, again, we'll talk about that. Also, we are going to be taking a look at the latest decompilation project because it's a Nintendo 64 game that I've been wanting to happen for a while. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with A Plague Tale Requiem. It is out today. In fact, it's dropping right into Game Pass, and we do have reviews that have gone live for it. We can see this over on Metacritic. Coming in at an 84, that's, I'd say, pretty good overall, with 51 critic reviews. We can take a look at the split here. 47 positive, 3 mixed, and 1 negative. Some of the top reviews include The Enemy, giving it just a perfect score overall, saying that Plague Tale Requiem shows immense growth, and it's a sequel that maintains the essence of the game and expands it. Now, on the other side, we have VGC, who gave it a 40, saying A Plague Tale Requiem is sometimes compelling adventure weighed down by poor technical performances and simple, frustrating, and repetitive gameplay. In fact, there is once again a bit of a frame rate controversy around this one because in some early analysis, it does appear that it is a 30 FPS game. Apparently, it's like a 40 FPS mode at the 120 hertz setting on your TV. Also coming in at 1440p on the Xbox Series X and the PS5 with 1080p on the Series S. And that's just kind of how I think we're going to be seeing this more and more as we go along, as these publishers and developers look to push these systems further for, yes, better visuals and effects. The frame rate will most likely suffer from it. I would like to think that we would be pushing heavily towards 60 FPS as a consistent measure, but doesn't necessarily look like it's the case. Also, we have an update for Nintendo Switch Sports, as the servers were pulled down when Nintendo noticed a bug in some of the patches that they had pushed. It looks like the game will be back up with online functionality. We can see this over on VGC, where they say update version 1.2.2 will be released October 18th, that being today, and it should restore online play. Save data backups will then be restored with version update 1.2.3. That is releasing on October 20th, so in a couple of days, but they are still looking to, I guess, just lock that in completely. But they will be compensating players a few different ways. One, if you're an online subscriber, they'll be adding an extra week to your subscription time for that expiration date, and they'll be doubling up on the number of in-game points that you're rewarded for playing online. So at least it's coming back. It was strange that it had to go down in the first place for an extended period of time, but them adding that week on, I guess, is a way to kind of make up for that. And then, of course, double points for people looking to unlock a bunch of stuff in Switch Sports. There you go. It should be hopefully back up and running today. Oh, and while all the talk really has been about Silent Hill and if Konami's going to show up with a game, it appears we have another showcase for this week, that being from Capcom with Resident Evil. We can see this over on Twitter from the Resident Evil account, saying the next Resident Evil showcase begins October 20th, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. This will be featuring Resident Evil Village Gold Edition and Resident Evil 4. Everyone is welcome to co-stream the event. So Resident Evil Village Gold Edition goes alongside of the new content that we're releasing, that featuring Rose. That is coming out October 28th, so a couple of weeks here. I am mostly curious, though, about Resident Evil 4. We've heard that they are taking some liberties with the overall story itself and the gameplay, kind of changing up, them also aiming for more of a scary tone. I have confidence in what they'd be able to do with Resident Evil 4, even though I'm sure there are diehard fans of this game, which has been ported all over the place, maybe some concerns around how they will handle it, but I have confidence after seeing Resident Evil 2 Remake, and yes, even Resident Evil 3 Remake, even though that wasn't as good as 2, but I'm excited to see what they have for us here this week with Resident Evil 4. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope, a game that I am really looking forward to, and I'm excited to pick this one up later this week and check it out. And I'm sure we'll be talking about some of our thoughts around this game on the podcast Saturday, but we did have review scores drop. We can see this over on Metacritic, coming in at a score of 85. That's on 64 critic reviews. Really, really good stuff here. That it puts it a couple of points above Kingdom Battle. Remember, that was a game that released early in the Switch's life, and it still looks good visually. I went back to it pretty recently to kind of prepare for Sparks of Hope, and yeah, it still holds up really, really well. In fact, I would say it still remains as one of the better looking Switch titles, especially when you take into account the different animations for the characters and the personality. All that continues along into Sparks of Hope, and in fact, many outlets that reviewed this say it's even better than Kingdom Battle when it comes to the characters themselves. If we take a look at the split, 61 positive, 3 mixed, 0 negative. In fact, from what I could see, everyone was really happy with what they played here. Places like IGN giving a 9 out of 10. I think the lowest score that I saw was from T3 giving it a 60. And with many of the reviews that I had taken a look at, it seems like this is going to be basically Kingdom Battle just expanded on, and that's great because Kingdom Battle was a lot of fun, and that's kind of what I'd be looking for with a sequel like Sparks of Hope. And it's also expanded on when it comes to the story itself, as we all figured, since they're taking to space, which I think is a great idea since you'll go to different locations, I assume different planets with different settings, and the characters bringing in Bowser is a great idea there. So I very much so looking forward to it, but wouldn't you know, it, of course, pops up online, and in fact, it seemed maybe an hour or two after embargo lifted, it got dumped online. So I'm not sure if that lines up necessarily, but it's just something to take note of there. Generally, what happens is a street date is broken, the game has pictures taken online of the box art, someone holding it, and then hours later, it gets dumped online, since it's pretty easy to do that with soft modded and hacked Switch. In this case, though, yes, Sparks of Hope has been dumped and leaked online. People are already downloading it, I'm sure playing it through emulators or hacked Switch systems. So if you are someone who is concerned about maybe different boss battles or different spoilers, the endings, you're going to want to keep an eye out and hopefully try to avoid as much of it as possible. I know YouTube thumbnails tend to spoil things, as well as just scrolling through Twitter and seeing some spoilers. I just wanted to make you aware that yes, that is out there now. Any forum threads you see where they're suggesting that they have played it, yeah, they may have. So keep that in mind. Fortunately, only a couple of days until this one's out, and it's going to start our string of releases, essentially going all the way into December, where we have a pretty loaded holiday time period. So exciting stuff here. Looking forward to grabbing Sparks of Hope later on this week. Next up, let's talk about PlayStation and this showcase that I feel like it's been rumored for, it's been a while, right? We've talked about Sony's going to do this showcase at some point, any day now. And that's basically been the saying for, well, months, it seems. I mean, we had like the State of Play that was definitely geared more towards Tokyo Game Show, but there were some good reveals in there. But we're waiting for that big first-party showcase blowout setting up 2023. Well, there seem to be some rumors and talks as to why they haven't done this yet. We could see this posted up. This was picked up on PlayStation Lifestyle from Millie A on Twitter. Now, I'm not sure what their track record is for this, but it seemed to be circulating quite a bit. Many of you were sending me this reasoning, where they say the ongoing CMA investigation for Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard has indeed delayed any showcase plans for Sony. Exclusive titles and first-party IP were locked in. Sony believes a showcase will add weight to Microsoft arguments. Silent Hill and Kojima, Who Am I reveal were part of the show. The initial announcement of the showcase was scheduled for October 11th, with the showcase taking place October 20th. Sony holding firm for now. So as I'm seeing this circulate, I do wonder if we're kind of looking for reasons as to why Sony hasn't done a showcase yet, looking to explain it at all, since it seems weird that they haven't said much. I know God of War Ragnarok is coming up, but going into 2023, there's not much else. Spider-Man 2 has the year 2023 attached to it. We've seen what happens when there is a year release window. Sometimes it just gets pushed to 2024 in that case. I mean, it could be coming out earlier in the year, could be coming out later in the year. We know the PlayStation VR 2 is basically prepped at this point for release probably in the next 4 months, I would say. I mean, the manual is starting to leak online. That tells me it's basically being boxed up and set on shelves in warehouses, just about ready to go. So in this case, the Silent Hill stuff, I will say, seemed to have been planned out for quite a while and wasn't necessarily going to be part of a PlayStation showcase, so that reasoning I don't think lines up there. But the idea that they're holding back a showcase because of the Activision Blizzard stuff is also kind of hard for me to believe, only because this is something that's going to be ongoing for a while. Is Sony going to hold back their showcase for the next 5 months because they're worried that they're going to show off exclusivity deals? Now, I assume not. It doesn't really line up with their overall strategy for the PlayStation brand, since they want to have big-time releases in 2023 and start to set that up along with the PSVR 2, especially on the game side. While I do believe they're going to push the price point, definitely the price point, maybe the release date too, in a blog post, I feel like they want to show off the games in motion in something like a PlayStation showcase. So maybe it doesn't happen in October. Maybe we have to get into November, closer to God of War Ragnarok's release date, or even after its release date, before Sony announces that big showcase that they can drop all these first-party and, third-party games into for 2023. But I guess for now, we're kind of hanging out waiting to see what they do. Next up, let's talk about another decompilation project that appears to have just about completed. Now what happens here, and we've seen it with things like Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time, is that people go back and they reverse engineer the code from these games, which then allows people to modify them significantly more than they were originally planned, and you're not playing it through an emulator, you're porting it natively to a platform like PC with x86. Well, we can see this posted up again over on VGC, saying the entirety of Nintendo 64 title Perfect Dark's code has now been reverse engineered. This was shared by Ryan Dwyer, who is a coder, who has fully decompiled both NTSC versions of the Rare N64 shooter, the version 1.0 release at launch, and a later re-release that fixed a number of bugs. This is according to Decompilation status page. Both of those versions are around 97.4% complete. However, Dwyer did explain this a bit more, where they say the NTSC 1.0 and final versions are fully decompiled, but a small handful of functions are not yet byte matching, even though they are functionally the same. The status page doesn't show these as 100% because it counts matching functions only. Okay, so this is exciting stuff, because if you look at Perfect Dark, especially on the Nintendo 64, hasn't aged well at all. The frame rate's not great, the picture itself is very muddy. They did a version for Xbox 360 that I really enjoyed playing when it released, because it had online play and it had just better visuals, frame rate, dual analog support for one controller, not two Nintendo 64 controllers plugged in. In this case, it being then ported after the decompilation has completed to PC will open up to a whole wealth of options. We could have online play technically added in. You could have ray tracing, higher resolutions, better frame rate, controls, new content, all kinds of stuff here. And that's the exciting part for me, because there is a lot to Perfect Dark, and it is, I would say, one of the classic shooters on consoles that I really enjoyed. It was GoldenEye taken to the next level with some weapons that are still iconic. Things like the laptop gun or the Farsight. That being brought up to current modern setups through decompilation, it's just exciting. So I'm hoping we hear more about some of the improvements that are made now that it's basically completed. And there are a whole number of projects that are currently in progress for decompilation. So the more we hear about them and these completing, it just gets more and more exciting for what's possible with games we grew up with that haven't necessarily aged the best when we look back on them now in modern times. But exciting stuff. Definitely keep an eye on this to see what we get out of Perfect Dark. Oh, and very quickly, it's been brought up quite a few times, especially with Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time. And while Perfect Dark won't fall under Nintendo necessarily, People wonder if a cease and desist would be sent to stop this, maybe in like the 0 hour. In this case, the way it works with decompilation is they don't use any code that falls under copyright. It's all original code that they kind of reverse engineer, and they don't use any of the assets that fall under copyright. You yourself technically have to have a legally obtained ROM that the code pulls those assets from to rebuild the game for any of these ports that happen to PC. So it's exciting because technically Nintendo or whoever else wouldn't be able to touch any of these projects going forward. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 Pro. And this is another story that really started to make the rounds, mostly because of the source behind it has been pretty reputable all the way around. But now we're starting to hear about mid-gen refreshes for PlayStation and yes, the Xbox. I'm not really sure what they would call the mid-gen refresh for the Xbox Series X. I guess the Xbox Series XX or the XL. Anyway, we can see this over on Insider Gaming, where they say reputable data miner and frequent Rockstar Games insider Tez2 has stated on the GTA forums that new mid-gen upgrade dev kits, presumably meaning the PS5 Pro and new Xbox Series X, are in the hands of developers. Going to say most AAA studios should have received the dev kits of midlife upgrades or should receive them by the start of the new year. It may shock you to hear this. I'm actually not surprised that this could be a thing. Mostly because if dev kits are just now finding their way into studios, we're still like a year to a year and a half off of these systems being available, and that's minimum. I mean, we could be into 2025 or end of 2024, like holiday, before these systems show up, and that would be 4 years after release, which is actually a little longer than it took for something like the PS4 Pro to show up. That was a bit different because 4K started to really pick up steam and seemingly faster than what Microsoft and Sony were expecting when the Xbox One and the PS4 originally launched. So kind of maybe a knee-jerk reaction there by Sony and Microsoft to kind of catch up with the resolutions of TVs. In this case, I'm not really sure what it would be tackling because I don't hear a lot of people asking for 8K, but I do see a lot of people maybe a bit frustrated with the 30 FPS games like Gotham Knights, or here we're hearing about Plague Tale being 30 FPS. I don't know if that would necessarily open up to 60 frames or even 120 frames as more of a standard thing to shoot for, but like I said, it wouldn't shock me if we start hearing about these systems a bit more if dev kits are indeed showing up at different studios, because what happened when PS5 dev kits started showing up? Well, people just kept taking pictures while running through the room for some reason and then posting it up online. So maybe this one will look like two space hangers taped together. And before we go to the comments of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, are you expecting Konami to show a new Silent Hill game this week at their event? Wow, 67% said no, it's Konami, and then 33% said yes, it's finally happening. I believe it's finally happening. I think this is it. Konami will show up with some sort of Silent Hill game. I know the consensus clearly is it'll be a pachinko machine or it'll be something NFT related, and that'll be it. Or, I mean, at the very least, it could be, I guess, a series for Netflix or Amazon, something there. But no, I do believe they're showing at least one game. Could be multiple titles. And you know what? I hope that's the case, because if it is, it should restore a lot of confidence and faith in Konami, maybe even tackling Metal Gear Solid. And while it's great to see Silent Hill, that's what I really want to see. Something Metal Gear related, and hopefully that means also Konami isn't necessarily interested in creating the game themselves, like they're rumored to be doing with Silent Hill. They look outside of Konami at different studios that would have the talent to create it, and that'd be great for Metal Gear Solid in the future. But for now, it's about Silent Hill, and I guess we'll see what they have for us this week. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from SCJ saying, I think a lot of these gaming handhelds actually look pretty cool, but it feels like after the success of the Switch that other companies now want a piece of the handheld gaming pie, and or they want to use handheld gaming as a way to get people used to streaming their games so they can normalize the game streaming on all platforms sooner. So I think it's pretty obvious that what you're seeing right now when it comes to these gaming handhelds, yes, it is a reaction to the Switch, and that's why it's taken years since the Switch released for you to start seeing these handhelds really pop up now. But when it comes to the streaming side, I think there is a bit of a step-by-step process here. The first thing is we need to get people on board with the idea of just using handhelds as like their primary way of gaming. The next step is to move us from physical media the digital media, just primarily that's it. There's no other option. And then we go to cloud streaming as the main option. So I've talked about that all digital future for a while now, but how do you know I haven't been talking about the all digital cloud streaming future? It's exciting stuff. And hey, at that point, I guess I'll be the 65-year-old playing GameCube games, provided that my discs don't really end up just rotting out before then. Guess we'll see. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope, coming out in a couple of days. After seeing reviews, are you picking this one up? And then also, what about the PlayStation Showcase? Do you think we're going to see one at the end of October, maybe into November, or not at all for this year? And then a PS5 Pro and an Xbox Series XL. Would you pick one of those up, or do you think Sony and Microsoft are going to stick with the consoles they currently have? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.